Hey everyone, thank you for tuning into this episode of Paranormal Now. I appreciate your support. If you want more content like this, I encourage you to please go to the Paranormal Pop page on YouTube. So just go to youtube.com/Paranormal Pop. And we have sister programs there like Coffee and UFOs, short form talk style, as well as a new program which I'm really excited about. This will be a weekly series. I'll be doing 2-minute videos summarizing some of the most well-known and significant UFO events in history. So on the YouTube channel, Paranormal Pop, youtube.com/Paranormal Pop, I'll be posting those once a week every Monday. So I'm really stoked because I think it's something that we can all share and discuss together. So go to the page, please like, subscribe, and comment down below too. If you have any feedback, constructive or harsh criticism, I'm cool with that. Just leave that down in the YouTube comments below as well. So thank you again all for your support, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of Paranormal Now. However you are and whenever you are, welcome, good souls of the planet and beyond, to Paranormal Now. I'm Alan B. Smith. Join us as we traverse the cosmic highway of paranormal portals and tantalizing turnoffs. Thank you for joining me on our first show of 2020. I hope this year is an amazing one for you, and I can say that I'm really excited for the coming developments for KGRA this coming year. So it's looking bright, it's looking exciting. I hope that whatever your intentions are this year, that you find your center and you get there. Sometimes life just happens to us and there's very little that we can do. That said, that will sort of be a part of our topic of discussion tonight. So we're going to steer the ship toward the heavens, and we're going to ask, is there something or something out there that can help us, heal us, or give us some meaning? And how much work do we need to do on our own to get there? Our guest tonight is Denny Hunt. He's co-founder of the website getwisdom.com. Now, primarily we talk about cryptids, ghosts, ufology, but we discuss spirituality here as well. For me, it's an important part of my life, and I feel that all of this is interconnected somehow. Now, I always think of myself as a spiritual agnostic and part-time atheist because I waver. I feel different things. I believe different things on different days at different times. I'm seeking, but I'm not necessarily desperate to get the answers. And look, some of you are going to be really cool with tonight's topic and accepting of it, and it's going to feel normal for you. For others, it might be a little bit more contentious, especially if you're in the atheistic box. But I implore you to keep an open mind, because while I may not subscribe to everything said tonight, I'm certainly open to those ideas and to listening to them and to hear what our guest in just a bit has to say. I was raised Catholic, so I have that background. But I'm open to all kinds of forms of spirituality and religious takes on the world that we live in. So I love these conversations. Hang in there with us. And speaking of being spiritually fit, I'm literally trying to make an effort to speak more slowly tonight, as I'm gleefully drinking up some seriously robust coffee and just loving it. So we've discovered a new brand of coffee, and we're making it French press style, and it's so strong and so good, and it's a hazelnut flavored coffee. Anyway, you all know my obsession with coffee. And I've got the coffee covered. Maria Wilson Duff, I'm pretty sure she's got the bourbon covered. So this is going to be a fun night tonight. Indeed. So please share your thoughts and experiences with us during or after the show on Facebook. That's facebook.com/paranormalnowradio. Twitter @paranormal_now. And of course, join us in the KGRA chat room. Just go to kgraradio.com, hit the drop down box. The chat room is right there. Click, join the discussion. And then later we'll open up the Paranormal Radio app phone lines for you. So listen to your cue for the Paranormal Radio app phone line, and that number is 85-KGRA live. That's 85-KGRA live. Just wait for us to give you the cue in the second hour to call in, because if you call in earlier, we'll not be able to get you on the air. Lastly, before we bring Denny on, some of you listening know that today I just dropped a new series of videos that I'm hoping to kickstart this series on YouTube. So if you go to Paranormal Pop on YouTube, you can find 3 videos. One is 2-minute summary on Roswell crash of 1947. One on the Socorro soft landing in 1964, starring Lonnie Zamora, as most people are more familiar with. And then, of course, the Bob Lazar episode, the ongoing episode of Bob Lazar. So these are really fun for me to do. I just love it. I love exploring these topics, and I love bringing a visual aspect to it. And I hope you really enjoy it. So please go to the platform on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com/paranormalpop. Please like, subscribe, comment, because the more action that these videos to get, then the more incentive I have to make more of them. I do like them, but it takes a lot of work. So I just want to make sure that you guys are enjoying them. And of course, if you have any criticism or feedback, you can hit me hard. I've got thick skin. So good or bad, just let me know what you think. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys. Okay, so Denny Hunt is co-founder of GetWisdom.com. He has a marine engineering technology degree, California Maritime Academy, 1984, and so much more. So Denny, if you don't mind, what I'd like to do is for tonight, I think it's best for you to tell us about yourself and how you ended up pursuing spiritual healing and metaphysics. So Denny, welcome to Paranormal Now.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me to this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I will start in the middle, I guess, because we don't have that much time. But in 1996, I was working for the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute. I was the chief engineer on Oceanographic Research Festival. I call it my golden handcuffs job. And it really was an amazing place to be, an amazing career, working with amazing people out at sea over the Monterey Bay Canyon doing deep sea research with remotely operated submarines. So in late 1996, I had this kind of epiphany. I often describe it as someone pouring cold water down my back, and it was like God was hitting my reset button. And my reaction to this was like, what I think is true is probably not true, and I need to kind of start over and look at things with a little bit more care and discernment.
Yeah.
And that's how it started. And so the outfall from that, part of the outfall from that was deciding to quit the job, sell the house, and move to Mount Shasta, which we did at breakneck speed. It was just my wife and I. She had a massage business down there. And she was kind of reluctant to go, but we did, and we moved up to Mount Shasta, which is kind of an amazing space, place known for its spirituality and all that. Yeah. And oddly enough, we lived in a little house that was built by a couple who used to have UFO parties there. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I thought, well, that's kind of quaint, and I didn't think much of it. But it was a house where the top story was built as one room, so we had a 360-degree view. So from that house, we could see Mount Shasta in all its glory, and then all the way up to Pilot Rock in Oregon, up the Shasta Valley. So it was like it was like living in a postcard. It was a magnificent place, and we met a lot of interesting people. But my first foray in terms of like rediscovering reality in the world, if you will, was into Christianity. We have two things in common, Alan. I love coffee. I'm drinking coffy right now. There you go. And I was raised a Catholic.
Do those two things come together for some reason?
I don't know, but I considered myself at the time a recovering Catholic. But anyway, I went back to the Bible, and I actually became pretty well versed in apologetics, which is the defense of Christianity. And I got involved in the home church movement and the unincorporated church movement. And I had a lot of friends that were involved in the freedom, movement and establishing your sovereignty and all this kind of thing. The Christian Juror Society, and I stay up late and listen to Art Bell and all that. But I really didn't get into the UFO thing too much. And then fast forward to, I think it was 2014 or so, a friend of mine who was a fire captain and a guy I used to meet at the coffee shop gave me some books by Ariella Louise Jones, the Telos books. And in there, she talked about the alleged civilizations associated with the Mount Shasta. And there was an ET aspect of this whole thing. And I thought, that's what I'm leaving out of this, is that there is an ET UFO angle to this whole thing that I've kind of just set aside arbitrarily without giving it much thought as to how that might be involved in this whole mix, what we're into on Earth. I think part of my awakening in 1996 had to do with a creeping realization that we were in trouble. So there was a sense of urgency in my feeling about things. Like, this wasn't just something like, I have to rediscover religion or God, or that there was something that needed to be done. It wasn't just something to be learned.
Yeah. And let me stop you right there before we continue. I'm curious about Mount Shasta. Mm-hmm. Now, do you think that indeed a locale has some sort of energy that attracts people, or do you think by chance certain people kind of end up in the same space and they sort of create their own vibe and that just attracts more people?
Well, I think it's a combination of both things. I don't think it's one or the other. Okay. I think there, especially in the last, maybe since the 1930s, is kind of a steamroller type situation where people were going up there and writing books, and more people went up there and wrote books, and then there was a spiritual enclaves. There's quite a Christian movement there. The I Am movement. I mean, there's a whole array of spiritual things in that area. And a lot of dark things too, which I found out later. Yeah. But anyway, I read these Telos books and I was like, okay, I gotta start looking at this. And then that got me into looking into the secret space program. And eventually we moved back down to an area about 60 miles north of San Francisco, and that's where I live now. And we were only up there for a year, but during those intervening years between late 1997 and 2017, I had gone back up to Mount Shasta quite a few times. I have friends up there and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And so I started looking at the ET UFO thing. I started, checking out all these different authors. I'm a voracious reader. I usually read 3 to 4 books, at once. And so you read a little bit, put one down, pick one up, and just alternate. Yeah, because I get bored just reading one book, so I'll switch from one book to the other until I finished all. I finished 2, add more. I just kind of go through it like that, and I've been that way since I was a kid. And so anyway, I really started to take more seriously this whole idea that there's an ET aspect to our reality here on Earth, and it could be very important and unknown, unseen. And so I'm trying to truncate everything here. But I got to tell you, one of the authors that I encountered not too long after the Telos books was Jacques Vallée, who was writing about the ET UFO phenomena back in the 70s. Mm-hmm. And he wrote a book called Messengers of Deception. And it's UFO contacts and cults, and he had such a different perspective on this whole thing, and it really got my attention. So what I did is I just kept studying and everything, and then at the time, the other thing that happened to me is that I was noticing like these, I guess what you call like energy pulses. I didn't know how else to describe them, but they were coming like maybe once a month. And I would be feeling, this is like 2012, 2013, 2014, somewhere in there. in that period of time. And I always feel like it's crawling out of my skin. It was very difficult for me just to be normal under the influence of this energy. I don't know what to talk. Some people call it ascension pulses. There's a lot of different terminology for it. Mm-hmm. And what I was doing in response to this was drinking. It made me calm down, and I felt at peace again. But I knew it was, maybe the right question, but definitely the wrong answer. Mm-hmm. And so that was another part of my search was, what's going on with this alcohol thing, And I'd already been through AA. As a young man, I knew I had issues with substance abuse and addiction. So I did the AA thing. I learned quite a bit from it. It helped me a lot. But I knew it wasn't the whole story because most of the AA, my perception of the AA experience is that, yeah, you can stop drinking, but you better go to meetings because people who stop going to meetings usually go back to drinking. That's kind of the pattern. Mm-hmm. And so I was looking at Bruce Lipton. I was looking at all these different modalities. What's the other guy? Joe
Campbell?
Spenza.
Oh.
Yeah, a lot of different therapies, talk therapies. Mm-hmm. And spent quite a bit of money pursuing this what I was hoping to find an answer about this self-medication problem. So finally, I encountered a local psychic, and her name's Vidya, and she came highly recommended, and she did a reading on me. And this is right around 2015, and I was heavily into the UFO research by this time. And she did a reading on me, and one of the things that she told me is that what's fueling your alcohol abuse or desire or self-medication scenario is an entity attachment. You have an entity attachment. That's what's driving this thing. She says, but I don't do entity attachment removals. But I know someone who does. And that kind of, I was not prepared to hear this. It was like so far off my radar screen. But there was something about it, when she told me, because in the context of all the other things that she had told me in this reading, it just rang true. I thought, this is something I need to pursue because it's different from anything else I'd heard. No one ever, I had not encountered anybody who said that, substance abuse addiction issues could have anything to do with, spirit attachments or entities or stuff like that.
Well, it's not that far off from way back when where everything was attributed to a demon or something like that. Exactly.
But if you go to an AA meeting, they're not going to talk about that.
Well, I mean, there is spirituality in 12-step programs.
Absolutely.
But yeah, of course, it's much more open, so you can believe in whatever higher power
right.
too. Yeah,
exactly. But they generally will not tell you that your addiction is due to an entity attachment.
Sure. No, I don't think that will ever or has ever happened.
Yeah. It's possible, but I never heard it. But
sure.
So anyway, so she said, I know a guy who does entity attachment removals, and she gave me this guy, Carl Mollison, this phone number. Mm-hmm. And I was on White on Rice. I called the guy up and I said, I just had this reading with Vidya. She referred me to you because she doesn't do entity attachment removals. Can you help? Sure. So he explained what he does. He was on the phone for me for quite a while, very patient with me. And he did, at the time, a remote procedure, healing procedure on me that he was calling the Lightworker Healing Protocol. And there was no fireworks, there's no bells and whistles. But after he did that, which was within probably 48 hours of me calling him, it just went away. And so that really got my attention. And, I was like, okay, that's pretty interesting. Well, about this time, after he had done this healing modality on me, I had decided to quit my job. I was an engineer with a instrument company that made instruments for measuring airflow. And I'd been with them like 15 years. And I just decided to quit. And I knew that wasn't my calling and that I had to, get with the program here because I had something to do that was a lot more important than that. It was a very good job, but I didn't have any problems with the job, but I just knew I had to go elsewhere. So I quit.
Were you depressed or like what was going on emotionally?
It was like after that healing that Carl did on me, it was like, okay, now I need to get busy. I need to do what I came here to do.
So what was that, like a weight being lifted or?
Yeah, it was that, and also it was like, you get up in the morning, put your boots on, you got work to do.
So it was like just an infusion of this new kind of motivation, or
exactly. It felt very purposeful. Like
okay, yeah.
Let's get to work here. So and I undoubtedly, I think I had just kind of automatically assumed that I would have guidance along the way. I guess that's one way of putting it, because I didn't know exactly what to do. I just knew that working at the instrument manufacturer's place as a sales application engineer wasn't going to cut it. I wasn't going to be able to do both things. Mm-hmm. And I'd actually spent many years there doing two things. Like I was a fine art painter for a while. I was a farmer for a while. I trained a mule. I did all different kinds of things.
That's an accomplishment, isn't it? Training a mule?
Yeah, it was for me. Maybe for the mule too.
Yeah.
So I was a potato farmer, a fine art painter. I was doing all these things concurrently with this job, and I think those kinds of things were kind of activities that just kept me busy, because I think deep down inside I knew I really wasn't doing what I came here to do. So it was like a time filler. Or an energy filler, or something to do with this excess energy that I had. So in March of 2016, I started my own YouTube channel, because by then I'd studied enough about the secret space program and whatnot to feel like I had something where I could be of help to other people. And I had seen a lot of SSP, we call them MAP abductees now, and I can explain that later. But secret space program, people who felt they had been exposed to it in some way, were coming out and trying to tell their story and stuff. And a lot of times they were kind of treated like a lot of people in the UFO thing, like, well, prove it. You don't have any proof. This is just your testimony. This is just and there was kind of like this.
He said, she said.
Yeah, kind of a dismissive attitude towards them. And so what I wanted to do was give an interview platform where they wouldn't be so harshly judged. They could just tell their story and have a friendly ear from someone who had done a little bit of homework beforehand, had something, hopefully intelligent to say about, what may have gone on with them. Yeah. And so I did that, and it was successful. It was, in terms of what I was doing, it seemed like I was on the right track. And so I got to interview some amazing people. I flew up to Canada and did the first in-person interview with a woman named Elena Kopolnik, who had quite a presence on the internet about this whole thing. And that was her first in-person interview that she'd ever done. She did all the other stuff she'd done, which she had just done online and whatnot. And I was very interested in the human contact, the video. You get to see our faces and all this kind of thing. And then I started going to the UFO conferences and whatnot. I was doing interviews and stuff. I went to Corey Good's first public appearance up in the Secret Space Program event that they had up in Mount Shasta. So I was up there and I did a bunch of short interviews up there that he ended up putting on his vlog and whatnot. And then in the midst of all that, Carl calls me back and he says, "Hey, I got an idea for your YouTube channel. And how about," because one of the things that Carl does in addition to this healing modality was that he became a channeler. And he was an interesting fellow because his background was from science. He didn't grow up being an open-minded person to the New Age movement, New Age principles, ufology, and all that kind of stuff. He was a scientist with Abbott Labs. And he had kind of an epiphany, change of heart back in the year 2000, where he, finally came to the conclusion that drug therapy really doesn't have that much to do with healing.
Yeah.
And so he got interested in hypnotherapy. He felt that there was great promise in hypnotherapy. And so he went through a course of studying hypnotherapy and ended up becoming proficient in channeling.
Before you went down this road, earlier on, did you ever get a chance, because I just want to bring this up because he passed away on December 22nd, Ram Dass. Otherwise known as Richard Alpert. Did you ever study his teachings at all?
Yep, when I was 14.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I bought the Be Here Now book.
Right. Yeah, we had that on our shelf. That's a trip, literally reading that book. Wow.
Oh, yeah. I've read it in all phases of consciousness.
There you go. Yeah. Well,
that's a euphemism for an LSD trip.
Yeah. It's funny when you read that book. It does have an effect on you. It's odd. It's really. When I first read it, I was like, I felt like I was being sort of like taken on a trip in a way. I mean, without all the excess visuals and whatever.
Well, that's Ram Dass in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Definitely. Yeah, he was a major contributor to my early days and exploring all that stuff. I got certified as not certified, but when the Transcendental Meditation came out and you go get initiated, I did that when I was 16, I think. So Carl calls me up out of the blue. He had already done the healing for me. This is several months later. He says, I got an idea for your YouTube channel. And by then he'd become a pretty accomplished channeler. And he was actually using the channeling work to improve his healing modality. And so at the time I met him, he was channeling archangels and his father, who was a minister. Mm-hmm. And he got along okay with his father, but his father was a God person and Carl was a science person.
Sure, yeah.
And so there were two ships passing in the night. They had a friendly relationship, but Carl never really got on board with what his dad was all about.
Well, that's a good analogy, two ships passing in the night, but they're both on the same sea.
Yeah, they just can't see each other.
Yeah.
And so Carl was channeling, at the time I met him, he was channeling archangels and his father, and he was using a lot of this channeling work to improve his healing modality, which he called the Lightworker Healing Protocol. And, of course, I was already sold on the Lightworker Healing Protocol because of what it had done for me, for a fraction of the price of what I'd already paid trying all these different other modalities to crack that nut. So he says, how about if I channel people who were somehow involved in the UFO ET cover-up? And, all the things that you've learned from your reading and going to these conferences and everything. And we'll just do some channeling work on your YouTube channel, and we'll see how that goes. And I thought, oh, that's a brilliant idea. I was all over it. I just thought that was great. So we started with Dwight D. Eisenhower, and then we channeled another fellow from that same era, and then we channeled James Forrestal. And I was hooked. I mean, I didn't know at the time if Carl really wanted to make a thing out of this, but I just kind of positioned myself to be ready. If he wanted to keep doing it, I would be ready. I would make myself available because I hadn't seen anything else like it. I had been exposed to channelers and whatnot, and the raw material and Seth and Casey and a lot of that other stuff. It wasn't entirely compelling to me. But we were kind of focused in this one area of study, the UFO, the ET. Of course, the appeal with the Eisenhower story was that he had allegedly met and signed an agreement with ETs at Edwards Air Force Base, I think, in 1953. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it's a deep and convoluted story. I'm trying to kind of jump from one highlight to the next, and please jump in. Yeah,
well, I'm wondering where, astronauts and space and aliens kind of fall into all of this.
Well, okay. Well, one of the things, this came up a little bit later in my association with Carl, mm-hmm. but I think at the time he contacted me in his healing work with his clients, this ET thing kept coming up. And him being a scientist, he was keeping records of his client base and what was happening, and numbers and figures and percentages. And at one point, I don't know exactly when, he told me that about 5% of his clientele had been abducted. And it caused problems for them, emotional problems or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I already knew this from the research that I had been doing. And Carl related to me a very negative scenario regarding the ETs. And And I thought, well, that's one side of the coin. That's kind of the way I looked at it for quite a long time. But later we started to do the channelings on a fairly regular basis, and it became kind of part and parcel of my YouTube channel. Why is this true? And this negative ET thing persisted. And what we were getting from the channeling subjects, and when I say channeling subjects, these are people who have died and they successfully transitioned. They made it to the light, to heaven, whatever your conception of being back with the Creator is. And about a third of us don't successfully transition. We become earthbound spirits.
When you say earthbound spirits, are we talking ghosts or?
Yeah, they can manifest as ghosts sometimes.
Okay.
But as a category, they're just people who have not successfully transitioned to the light. And so they're not, as an earthbound spirit, they're not really capable of reincarnating again until they get back to the light.
Well, it's interesting because I always go back and forth on the whole ghost theory, as it were, because so many reports are people seeing the same thing or repeated activity. And to me, I often think that really is something that's sort of stuck on a loop. And it makes me think that maybe ghosts really are just a residual of some energy or spirit.
I think there's a lot of consciousness phenomena that could be slid over into the category of ghosts, and they wouldn't be necessarily, a disincarnate spirit. Okay,
so the ones that you're speaking of that didn't transition, would that be a
disincarnate spirit that may never manifest as a ghost to anyone?
Okay.
That's not necessarily what would happen.
Okay.
It's just that they're lost. They haven't made back to the light. So, and anyway, the ones that we're channeling are the ones that have gone back to the light. And one of the things I learned that distinguished Carl from most of the other channelers was that his route for channeling was through Creator, was through God, or through, at the time I met him, through the archangels, which would allegedly protect him from interlopers, from people trying to interfere with the channeling, or present themselves as the entity being represented, but they're an imposter. Okay. So he was just adamant about that. He would always talk about that, about how he had to have the channeling protected. And at the time I thought, okay, well that's just his thing. That's what he needs to do. Didn't think much of it. And, looking back at it now, I mean, I see myself as being in training and him being very respectful of the education that I had to go through on my own pace. He was not a proselytizer. He's not someone who's going to, say, hey, Denny, this is the way it is, get on board. He was very patient with me through this whole process. And looking back now, I have a lot of respect for him because it must have been a really frustrating experience for him. But
with all of this, so earlier on, you're dealing with this needing to fill a hole or using substance or anything. Now that you're on this journey and you're learning from Carl, what is your goal at that point?
Well, the goal now is healing. And that's actually, this light worker healing protocol thing that I talked about earlier is actually something that we developed into an online course for the Get Wisdom website. So, that's why I'm so excited about this, is because so much of this activity around the UFO thing is learning this, learning that, learning this, learning that, learning this. It's just like a mind candy factory.
Yeah,
and we're consuming all this information and considering all these different theories and da 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 da. And it's like, okay, well, what do you do? I mean, what's it good for? What are we going to do with all this information? And also for me, it's like, why in 1996 did I suddenly wake up with this feeling, a sense of urgency, this foreboding, like something's wrong. I got to do something. This isn't right. And that's the feeling I had.
Well, I'd rather have the ufology candy than the Kardashians. I'd rather.
Oh, no doubt. no doubt.
To that.
Yeah, there is a what do you call, like a spectrum of quality of the candy.
Sure. Absolutely, man. Yeah.
So yeah, no doubt, I'm with you there. But I'm older now, and I'm feeling like I would like my life to count for something. I would like to contribute something really good before I kick off.
Okay.
I really want to help somebody and not just, I want the real deal. That's what I want. And so I obviously got tickled a little bit in that area in my interaction with Carl, when he did this healing for me, because it changed my life. And it wasn't just about the drinking. It was like this decision to quit my job and start this YouTube channel and, da, 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 da. And it was, for me, it was a big deal. It was a big thing.
Yeah.
And, so I think an outsider looking in, maybe not so much.
Have you seen though, exactly. So an outsider looking in is going to question, much of what you talk about. And
Denny, you had the best job in the world, and then you quit that. You moved to Mount Shasta, and then you got the second best job in the world, and you quit that. And shouldn't be in a home.
Yeah, because the next question is, for what? Why would you do that? And when you bring up something like healing, spiritual healing, I mean, what could people possibly expect? I mean, people have been laying on hands, Reiki, meditation. I mean, people have been praying. Millions and billions of people pray for the world to be a better place, and it's okay.
That's a great question.
It is getting better. It's very gradual, and there's a lot of ups and downs. I don't know. So I just sometimes wonder.
Well, I think that's a great question. I wouldn't agree with you that things are getting better, but
well, there you go.
But the defining healing is a really important thing. Okay, so part of that is that in order to heal something, you need to know what the causal factors are. Okay, and this goes back to Carl's experience with his life as a scientist, working for Abbott Labs and doing drug therapy, new inventions and stuff, I mean, he had patents and stuff. He was no slouch, the guy knew his way around the science side of the pharmaceutical industry, not so much on the marketing, but on the science, developing the drugs and whatnot. So, admittedly, so much of that has to do with with treating symptoms. And so if you pray and you don't know what's wrong, I think it's a little bit dubious to think that your prayers are going to be effective. So much of the work at Get Wisdom is describing, okay, well, what's wrong? What are we trying? What needs to be healed, and why is it broken in the first place? And I think that's where we end up being, the naughty little boys in the back of the theater yelling fire. Well, nobody really wants to hear that.
Yeah, I totally understand the analogy of, how can you fix a car if you don't know how it works or how the parts work? And I get that, but I guess how far could you possibly go with healing? Now if you, and I just saw a GIF in the chat room, and it is very pertinent, good timing. If you are a fan of Baby Yoda, and in The Mandalorian, right? And you see that, the idea of the Force is that you could eventually heal a wound. That literally put your hand on someone and heal a wound. It almost, I think there's a part of us that says, you know what, maybe that's possible. But I have a hard time accepting that something that far extreme is possible. Do you think that with enough work and intention and development that we could get to that place? Or is the healing, will it always be a sort of subtle, unseen healing, as it were?
Well, a lot of it's unseen, but I think probably one of the most important things about the kind of healing I'm talking about is the healing that happens when you're in a partnership with the divine realm or creator or God. Mm-hmm. So we were talking about prayer earlier, and if you want a really concise and short description of the Lightworker Healing Protocol, it is a high-level prayer request.
Sure. Yeah.
And so what we're doing is we're we're asking a whole series of very specific things to be done on behalf of our client, and we're asking the divine realm to do those things. And the difference between that and what you might call a normal prayer is due to that specificity. So through Carl's channeling work, and now even through our practitioners who are working with the LHP and giving him feedback, he keeps refining the process so that we have better questions, we have better things to ask for in that high-level prayer request for the divine realm to do that on the behalf of our clients. And it's
the quality of how you're asking it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, part of it is because there's two things that really influence the efficacy of the Lightworker Healing Protocol. One is the belief quotient, mm-hmm. and the other is the intention and the understanding of what you're doing. So we're never going to really fully understand the divine realm and all the different ways that our Creator can actually heal us, because it is an energy equation. It's the consciousness before the material world. It's the consciousness that gives rise to the material world. Mm-hmm. But humans in our current state, of our own volition, forces, and resources, and our own psychic abilities, are very limited in terms of what we can do in terms of healing. Yeah. So with the help of the divine realm, we could become quite powerful, but we have to know what to ask for. Okay,
so there's a lot more to cover in that regard.
Oh, gosh.
I do want to bring us to a place that you and I are familiar with, or I'm more familiar with at least, the Bible and Genesis. Now, in the beginning of Genesis, I don't know who posted this video and who the person was speaking, but I remember listening to this video, and it was really well done. And basically, it was telling the story of the creation of the universe according to Genesis.
Yeah.
Interchanging it with the explanation of the Big Bang Theory.
Oh, interesting.
And all along the way, it kind of made sense. Now, we were just watching something earlier this evening, and one of the comments was, hey, if in the Bible it says, let there be light, and then later, the next day or 2 days later, then there was the sun, that seems to be contradictive. But if you think in terms of the Big Bang, you have to have dust and the formation of stars and particles heated, right? There's light, there's glow in the sky. It's more like a dim effervescent glow, right? And then those particles accumulate and create suns and stars, whatever. So my point is, can we ground our spiritual lives in spiritual dogma or literature, and that helps us? Or because what you're talking about here is really sort of opening your mind to the mind, the God mind itself. Is it better for us to sort of let go of the literal interpretation of things and open our minds that way?
Well, I think initially that's a good formula because, one of the great impediments in my more recent education is just me making a lot of a priori assumptions about things. And I think, when I was talking about my little epiphany back in 1996, I think that was one part of what really shook me, was that, I just made a lot of assumptions about the way the world is or the way the world works without really looking at it. Mm-hmm. And I think I kind of had to go through a Dark Night of the Soul experience to look at the darker side of things, which led me to the conclusion that I still hold to this day, is that things are not getting better. And there's been a lot of warnings in the history of man that we need to wake up. We need to be more discerning and about our interpretations of things that are happening to us and around us. And
well, statistically, I continue to hear studies saying that despite the turmoil that does exist in our world right now, that in fact the human race on this planet is doing much better. There's less people in poverty, and more people living longer and healthier, and there's less wars in general. So how do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, to be blunt, I would call that disinformation. And, you know, I went through one phase of this looking at it from the perspective of like William Cooper's work.
Yeah.
And then I went through another phase of it being exposed to studies in mind control and the secret space program. And what's going on with the ETs on Earth.
So so if you can help us kind of, because whenever you bring up those three subjects at the same time, it's kind of hard for us to connect. where are you going with it?
it's a big elephant, and you can't swallow it in an hour. And right. I think it literally took me 6 months of kind of coming to a more, I kind of hate to use the word, but more of a conventional New Age perception of things to what we are now teaching at Get Wisdom. Okay, and I think
towards that elephant. So we're coming up on the break. So can you encapsulate for us what you have seen and what potentials there are for using a spiritual connection for healing, the actual healing itself?
Okay, well, the actual healing itself has to do with healing the perpetrators. Okay, so this isn't just about, healing your Uncle Mary and Uncle Fred or whatever. This is about healing. This is about saving humanity and Earth, and not only that, our perpetrators, the ones that are running the show on Earth right now, which have very dark intentions for humans.
Okay, we'll talk about the perpetrators then on the other side of the break. But go ahead.
Yeah. So this healing modality extends to them. So it's kind of like an all-purpose solution to what ails us. And the big barrier right now is just the numbers of people doing it. And we're kind of like at the infant stages, the embryonic stages of all this. But I contend at this point that if humanity is to have a future, it's going to be by virtue of their prayer life and their connection to their Creator. And if that develops and if that flourishes, then we have a very bright future, because we're going to be involved in saving other races that have become even more disconnected from their Creator than we did. Mm-hmm. And so this galaxy is designated as the ultimate free will experiment in the universe. And the focus within the galaxy right now, as far as we know, is Earth itself and this, what I call the divine human experiment, the divine human free will experiment. So this is the ultimate situation where free will is being put into play to see what would happen with a physically incarnated light being dealing in essence with on a prison planet.
Well, you're making it sound like the galaxy itself is special. Where do you get Where do you get your intel?
From the channeling work that Carl's been doing for almost 3 years now.
Wow. Okay.
2 years on Get Wisdom.
Now, is that limited just to the galaxy, or are there other I mean, we know that there are billions of galaxies out there.
You're right.
Will there not be other experiments? Or
I guess for the sake of our purposes and what we need to know and what we need to do, I mean, those are all interesting questions, and they probably should be pursued at some point. But right now,
galaxy.
Right now, our house is on fire.
Yeah.
So. And we have an opportunity to do something about that ourselves rather than just being spectators.
Well, that's funny that you say that, because people sort of make that analogy in general, right? Like living your life and just taking care of your immediate world, you and yours. And, having your eyes to the sky and being a dreamer is not practical. Why even entertain all this stuff in the first place?
Yeah, it's a disempowerment.
Right, it's kind of like what you're saying, not exactly, but kind of like what you're saying, that we can only focus on this realm of our spirituality in this galaxy, in this experiment. We can't spend time, trying to figure it all out. And I'm not saying it has the same negative connotation, but it's like how much attention can our brains give all of this?
Well, if we're in partnership with the divine realm, we could take on a whole lot, and we were actually built for that. But so there's there's a disempowerment narrative, like where just take care of your own little backyard and everything will be fine. Well, we really weren't built to do that. We were built as a human family, and the human family is in a precarious situation. And as the human family, we can retrieve ourselves from that precarious position, but we have to know what's wrong and what to do about it. So, I think those are the kind of questions, those are the kind of areas where Get Wisdom has been so helpful. Not only to me, I got a dog in the fight. So
sure, yeah.
I would invite people looking into this. Look at, don't talk to me. Look at the other people who encountered Carl and I and Brian elsewhere. Like through my YouTube channel, or Carl just did an interview. Well, Carl did an interview with Kevin Moore back in May of 2018, and about 3 weeks ago, Kevin finally put it on his channel. It's got about 8,000 views now, but Carl and creator, because Carl channeled in that interview, didn't pull any punches, and it turned out to be quite triggering for a lot of people, and rightly so. So, that's another thing I would invite people to do. That if what I'm talking about piques any curiosity, that's another place to look. And, of course, Get Wisdom itself, getwisdom.com. There's about 2,000 pages of answered questions. There's this channeling series that we did with over 100 subjects. Each of those videos are, anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours long. And weekly webinars that we posted there on all different kinds of topics. And then the healing modality that we teach, the Lightwork Breathing Protocol. Mm-hmm. And then some free books that Carl wrote and stuff. It's a good 6 months of material, assuming you're a fast reader and like to watch lots of videos.
Right. So we're going to go to break in just a second.
Okay.
So to go back to my other question, theoretically, is there a future where not only do we heal the soul of ourselves and the planet, can we heal ourselves physically in a way like, let's say I break my finger, that one day there's a future in me that would be able to heal that?
I think so. I don't think we have any specific information that addresses that particular situation, but I would say based on inferring from what we have learned, I would say that is definitely true. But in between now and that date, there's a lot of other healing that has to be done.
Sure.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Just anything that's complicated, you sort of learn things along the way. All right. So this is Alan for Paranormal Now on KGRA. And my guest is Denny Hunt from GetWisdom.com. We'll be right back. We'll be asking him about who he meant when he said the perpetrators.
Okay.
And I'd also like to know his answer on, is there life after death, and what is it like on the other side? We'll be back on the other side. This is Alan B. Smith for KGRA. Once again, thank you all for tuning in. We will be right back.
The signs keep on coming, they point to the end, but I hold on so tight.
For years, the KGRA digital broadcast station has been your contact for live UFO paranormal talk radio worldwide, bringing you the top names in research and investigations 7 nights a week. Our listeners connect to the KGRA on various platforms like TalkStream Live, TuneIn, Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and many more. Now, you can stream your favorite paranormal talk radio shows with our new fully integrated custom KGRA mobile apps for Android and iPhones. Listen to your favorite paranormal talk shows from any mobile device 24/7, free with smartphone or tablet. Utilize custom features to access news, show pages, archives, contests, events, and live interactive chat rooms. Set show notification alerts and never miss your favorite live programs. All free and available to download in Google Play or the iTunes App Store. This is Paranormal Now.
So tight. My heart aches from this change, but I can't live life making the same mistakes, 'cause I know that's not right. And though I never meant to cause this pain, but I know what I have to do, because sometimes we...
Welcome back, everyone. This is Alan B. Smith, and you're listening to Paranormal Now on KGRA Radio. Taking us out of the break was January Waits by Septembrio. Septembrio is our regular bumper music. Fantastic people. Great music. If you want to find out more about them, go to septembrio.com. All right. So the phone lines are down. So unfortunately, we'll not be able to take any phone calls tonight. That said, anyone listening, just jump into the KGRA chat room. Just go to kgraradio.com, drop down menu, click on chat, and we'll see you in Discord. And you can ask Denny or myself any questions during the rest of this last hour. So you know that I love entertaining the big questions. And as much as I want the answers, I know I can't expect everyone to have the answers, because I don't think anyone really does have the answers. But I don't know, Denny, do you think you have the answers?
Yeah, we think we do, and that's another reason that we're kind of like the the black sheep of the family, I guess. And it's understandable, you know. It's like humans are they like a consensus view, you know. And I was very enamored with that methodology myself when I first started getting into the ufology and ET thing. It turns out it's a form of cherry picking, but it keeps you sane. And that kind of study or that kind of methodology for determining truth does work in some other areas, but fewer than we think. It turns out.
But do you think that science is a noble pursuit?
It can be. I think in this world, it's been subsumed mostly through mind control. And I guess that's another thing that I studied kind of late in the whole game, and I lament not having studied mind control prior to, because when I read Jacques Vallée's book, that was like a signal to me that what he was getting at was he was pointing to something greater than what he actually disclosed in the book, I think. But I really do think that I would have saved myself a lot of time if I had studied mind control before, or at least concurrently with this whole UFO, MAP, SSP phenomenon. And when I say MAP, that's the acronym that we use in place of the secret space program, because I think the secret space program is actually a misnomer. It's very misleading. So we call it the Mercenary Army Program. But let's go back to what you asked me before, and the perpetrators.
Well, actually, before we go there, to what you just said.
Okay.
I was just having a conversation with the love of my life, and we were talking about believing things. And I'll use this as an example. So in Australia, we have these massive fires. Some people are screaming, "This is global warming. End of story. That's what's happening."
Yeah.
Other people are saying, no, global warming is a conspiracy of every single country on the planet covering this up, and it was 100% fabricated. End of story. In reality, global temperatures are getting hotter. I mean, that's just, thermometers don't really lie. So we look at that. That's an objective truth of science. Now, what are the exact combinations of causes that instigate the heat is another thing. But in this case of Australia, you can have it both ways. You can have mismanagement of fire management, right? Which is what happened here. This was the fault of humans doing fire management poorly. However, the exasperation and the veracity of the spreading, size and speed of this fire is beyond normal conditions. So that would be instigated by global warming. And so I find it frustrating sometimes when people realize that we've been lied to about one thing or another, right? Like, I don't know, like Columbus is this golden god and he's this perfect, wonderful person we should all worship. Well, no, he was very flawed and he did a lot of bad things. That's just one example. We weren't taught about the bad things he did in school. And then you get out and you learn about these bad things and you're like, well, why didn't you tell us that? And then you realize the government's corrupt and the pharmaceutical companies are corrupt. You have these revelations and you stop trusting. Mm-hmm. But the problem is what I think happens to people is they stop trusting so much that they will start believing anything that is the counter to the narrative that they were told.
Yeah, or even worse, believing nothing.
But when you're believing the counter, it doesn't make the counter necessarily true either. And you have to take a breath, I think, and just really. It's not easy because we get emotional about things. Yeah. But really take in stride all aspects. So sometimes the government says something, you got to listen and try to weigh it out, pros and cons. What do I believe? What don't I believe? You can't knee-jerk react and be like, I don't believe any of it, and vice versa. But I think what happens is people get into the conspiracy theory mind and start believing anything that's a conspiracy theory. And they're basically in the same space that they were when they were believing the mainstream narrative.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I think that mentality kind of applies to spirituality as well.
Well, it's everywhere. I mean, it's the divide and conquer. I mean, that gets back to what I was saying earlier about me lamenting that I hadn't studied mind control more thoroughly, before I got into all this. I never really had a fair appreciation of how much that played into not only the ufology and ET phenomena, but everything else. It was completely underestimated. My opinion now is that I completely underestimated that from the outset, from the start. Mm-hmm. And thankfully, when I got into the through Carl's work and then through studying the Secret Space Program and MAP and hearing some of those stories, I started looking into the mind control study work that was done by Cisco Wheeler and Fritz Springmeier. How to create what is that book? How the Illuminati Create an Undetectable Mind-Controlled Slave. Mm-hmm. And then they wrote another book, Deeper Insights into the Illuminati Formula. I read that book. I found Elisa E's books, Our Life in MK Ultra, mm-hmm. And it turns out, these people are at the apex. I mean, they're an extreme example of mind control, focused on their lives to extraordinary ends. Right. The other one was Thanks for the Memories by Bryce Taylor, mm-hmm. and then. There's another guy who wrote one of the early books in mind control. Walter Board wrote a book. I have a whole list, a recommended reading list for mind control. And once I got educated in that area, then I really started. It helped me figure out some of the other stuff that I was slowly starting to learn from the channeling work that Carl was doing, and it really helped me. It really helped me. And I can't stress how important it is for people who are into some of these topics like we're discussing here. Mm-hmm. Is to study mind control. It opens whole new doors to this whole thing. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, there was a time where I didn't entertain the idea that maybe reptilian aliens are disguised as humans and living, I don't believe that now.
Don't.
But I entertained the idea. I forget his name, David
Icke.
David Icke, yeah.
Yeah.
And when I feel like I've been severely lied to as a citizen of the country, of the world, when our own country in the past has exposed populations to toxins as an experiment, to acid, the things that we have done are just atrocious. And
yeah, so one of the things that I always ask Alan is why? Why did that happen? What were the causal factors that would make humans behave that way to their fellow humans? And most of the answers that I've gotten, even in the alternative arenas, have been unsatisfactory. And I realize myself, looking back, that there was a time when I was accepting unsatisfactory answers, calling them sufficient.
And what's sufficient?
That the explanations that I used to use for something like that, they weren't well-founded. They were...
Okay, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't good. They weren't good arguments. They weren't sound.
Right. And I think that, and we do this on the show all the time, we talk about ideas and speculations that I may not necessarily believe in, but I think that there's certainly, I think it's our duty to entertain and consider, not just entertain, but consider those ideas.
Yeah.
Whether some of them are very quickly disproven or found to be absurd, or others have elements of truth that are really worth investigating.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like spirituality is the same thing for me. There were things that I was told growing up in terms of my religion that I found to be utterly false.
Right.
And that doesn't...
Were you raised a Catholic?
That doesn't mean... Oh, and that funny, I want to say this because there's someone who's listening right now who is a Catholic. And I always wonder, does he get offended when, I make these kind of Catholic remarks?
Right.
Because Catholics, a lot of us do that. We say we have the Catholic guilt or Catholic in recovery.
Right.
All these things. And we mean it light, playfully, and not in a mean-spirited way. But I wonder if practicing Catholics are maybe a little bit upset by that. I'm not sure. But okay, so we'll go back to the point that you were going to continue from the first hour, and that is, so we're dealing with our own spiritual healing and evolution, and working against us are the perpetrators, as you called them. Mm-hmm. Who are the perpetrators?
Okay, so what we found out was that there's 4 alien races, one of them being soulless, that are basically running the show on Earth. Mm-hmm. The apex, the top of the heap, is the Anunnaki. And then we have the Arcturians and the Reptilians. And the Arcturians were the creator of the soulless Greys, which is like a biological robot. And the Greys are very interested in human DNA. And they're trying to solve the riddle of human DNA and how souls can reincarnate. And all 4 of these races, are looking at the human phenomenon from an atheistic perspective. They're complete atheists. They don't believe in any kind of divinity. They know that humans have some kind of mojo, and they're great sources of energy. Mm-hmm. And so it's a parasitic relationship. And
wait, can I ask how to within the context of what we're talking about? How are they atheists?
Well, they don't believe in God. They don't believe that they were created by God. Okay. They don't believe that humans. They're very dismissive of humans. We're kind of like cows to them. Our lives really aren't worth anything to them. We're mostly we mostly exist for their supplying them energy and entertainment and food, even. Mm-hmm. And
this is all Carl's channeling.
Yeah, and they've been manipulating us for eons. So there's no human sense of history apart from their manipulations. So that's one of the things that makes this very difficult, because we've all grown up within the institutions generated by the ET cultures themselves, and so we don't have a light being perspective on our existence as humans. And one of the more notable things that happened in the beginning, and this is the second attempt this is the divine human free will experiment, had a first foray that ended that was not successful. And so this is the second one that we're in the middle of now, or at the end of, you might say. So when the Anunnaki came back to Earth and found another crop of humans on Earth, they did the same thing that they did the first time they found us, and that was they genetically manipulated humans to disconnect us from our higher selves and our deep subconscious, because that way we were much easier to control. And it turns out I take great exception to Sitchin's work, but because I think he was a lousy translator. But it turns out a lot of what he wrote is pretty accurate in terms of the Anunnaki.
Sure,
not all of it, but quite a bit of it was accurate. And the other area where we found a lot of accuracy was in Barbara Marciniak's work.
I just want to quickly put into context the Anunnaki for people who may not be familiar. So they are a supposed alien race that came down to Mesopotamia and mined gold and messed with human DNA. Just to clump it really quickly. And this was Zecharia Sitchin's theory based on his translations of these ancient scrolls out of Mesopotamia.
Right. Yeah,
okay. Sumerian text, sure.
You're right. So, so I kind of went into that holding my nose, to be honest. In the partnership and Get Wisdom, there's Brian, who's an attorney. He's our webmaster. He's quite versed in a lot of this topic. He's been studying all this stuff for about like 35 years, if I'm not mistaken. He's read all the Sitchin books. He's our resident expert on the Anunnaki, and he pushed Carl in the channeling work for good reason to investigate this more thoroughly. And there's tons of questions that we still haven't asked. But we're trying to cover the whole beast here, and it's just even with 2,000 pages, we still fall far short of the mission of actually kind of fleshing this whole thing out, because it's so at odds with everything else that's been generally accepted about humanity and what's going on here. It's a far-fetched proposition to say, the Earth is totally run by aliens, and for icing on the cake, Alan, reptilians do kill and replace humans and live out human lives as humans, where the actual occupant of that human life has been killed. Well, that is so. David Icke is mostly right in what he's talking about. We found out.
Well, okay. So here's the thing, though, with David Icke specifically, is remember he was doing that whole thing like, if you pause the video at this certain moment, you see these yellow reptilian eyes.
Yeah. Right.
And that was an artifact of VHS or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so you go, wait a minute, man, come on now. Now that that's totally disproven, how am I supposed to believe the other things that you're saying now? Yeah. But in your case, most of this information is coming from
channeling.
The channeling.
Yeah, which really that's another stretch.
It is another stretch. it kind of gives you breath, because it's like you're not. Well, I guess one person can see it that way, but you're not saying you're not pulling something out of thin air and being look at this piece of evidence, and really it's something else.
I mean, for some people, this is a total farce. Mm-hmm. What I'm talking about is just nonsense. It's all tinfoil hat and too much coffee material. And I totally get that. There was a time in my life when I've had the same reaction to it. This guy's nuts saying this stuff.
Well, I still believe in the reptilian thing. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I just, for me, it's a hard one to swallow. Now, I can accept that there's reptilian race out there, but actually embodying or shape-shifting to look like humans, that's where it gets tough for me to believe.
Yeah. I mean, these alien races are so far technologically advanced over humans, it's not even funny. From a consciousness perspective, we're like playthings to them, and it's like a board game for them. All this geopolitics and one of the things that I've been studying lately, more recently, is just genocide, or what R.J. Rummel calls democide, where you've got literally tens of millions of people killed by their own governments. What is that? I mean, and that's actually kind of treated in our popular culture as just kind of like a footnote or a kind of a sideline interest. And I look at it, based on what I've learned so far, and that just defies belief. Like, how could you possibly explain something like that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, Christians certainly, it is part of their everyday awareness, the atrocity of that, with the culling of firstborn according to the gospel, after the birth of Jesus, the culling of the firstborn.
Yeah, you almost have to go to some kind of religious explanation for something like that, some kind of like otherworldly.
Well, no,
you know what I mean? It's
I think the opposite. Well, I think the opposite is true, because I think the Bible actually tells you that this is an act of desire, an act of desperation, and an act of envy by a king who seeks to maintain their own power. Now, I think that you can be a religious person that believes in a God, or an atheist, it doesn't matter, and still be a good person or an atrocious person. So I think that it's like there's a psychology there, that one convinces themselves why they can do such terrible things.
Okay.
What about you? I mean, do you think that we're innately like evil, or is it?
No, I think we're innately good, and it's through these manipulations that these terrible things happen. I think most people, left to their own devices, would never do anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to go kick dogs or beat up their wife or kill their neighbor or go on a shooting spree, mm-hmm. or stab somebody in the back. I mean, those are very anomalous things if you think about them from a psychological, spiritual, or even humanistic perspective.
Yeah,
they're kind of outliers, and they deserve a closer look in terms of causal, the causative part of this. What caused this? What really caused this? And I think things like that are kind of kept out of the New Age arena, because most of the New Age theories and whatnot don't really have a very compelling answer for that. That's been my experience. And
I think you're right. I think a lot of it is very self-help oriented, which doesn't address all these other questions.
Yeah, there's suffering in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the reasons that made this Get Wisdom adventure so compelling to me, because this is mostly Carl's work. Brian and I serve in more of a support role, and students, if you will, mm-hmm. for the whole Get Wisdom project. But the content is really derived through Carl's work. And one of the things that got me from the beginning, as I mentioned earlier, was this idea of healing, mm-hmm. and that he was using the channeling primarily to help him improve the healing modality. And that spoke volumes to me in terms of, what is this for? What is this all about?
Yeah.
And so it was very compelling for me to be. I was drawn into it because I felt like, well, I could contribute. I could do something, rather than just learn or share what I learned or be right about something.
So have you healed addiction?
Well, for myself, I think you could probably say to date, yes. I don't have to go to meetings to not drink. I don't want to drink. I've been part of. I'm a teacher now. I can teach the LHP. I've taught a class. I helped develop the course online, and I've been the little fly on the wall with Carl's clients and my own clients. And we get feedback for this work that we do, and words can't do it justice. It's so humbling. It's such a joy to be able to really help somebody to change their life just by saying a prayer for them.
Well,
And this isn't me healing anybody. This is me asking the divine realm to do it on their behalf.
Well, what about the community? Because with things like 12-step programs, the attraction that is in effect helpful in the recovery is the fact that you can relate to other people and have
that's infinitely valuable.
Yeah. So where does that fall in what you do?
Well, this whole prayer thing is tremendously amplified when it's done in numbers. Mm-hmm. And we've actually been able to take advantage of that in the modality itself. But the big thing that we're hoping for is to have what we're calling a quorum, and it's an unknown number right now. But this whole debacle going on Earth right now could do a 180 if there's enough people doing the Lightworker Healing Protocol, and that's why I'm involved with Get Wisdom, because we want it to grow. We want more people to learn the Lightworker Healing Protocol and start using it and start sharing it and just have it flourish and spread all over the world. And we charge for our services, we charge for the healing, and we charge for the course because we want to use that money to generate more advertising and sharing the word and whatnot. And it's, we feel it's worth it. And just, I'm blessed because I have a perspective that a lot of our students don't have, because I get to see it from like the inside and both sides. So, like somebody might for instance, the classic scenario for me was a MAP abductee contacting me and telling me about what's happening in their life. They can't sleep. They're afraid for their kids. They wake up in the morning with marks on their body. Just this horrendous, life. Yeah. And so they go, like in those early days, I wasn't trained as a Lightworker Healing Protocol practitioner. And so I would refer him to Carl, and Carl would work with them. And then I got to see what happened down the road with these people. And it was just, you couldn't pry me off with a crowbar after that.
Question for you. Now, one of my favorite religious sayings that I've heard is from Wicca. And it goes something like, and it may be Gardnerian Wicca or Wicca in general, but it goes something like, do no harm to others, do as you will. So as long as you're doing no harm to others, you can do what you want.
Oh, right.
Does that jive with the wisdom and the truth that you're talking
except for the fact that we are a human family. And there isn't some special group of us that get to ascend. We're going to make it as a family, or maybe we'll get to try again later down the road. But we're going to succeed as a group. We are the human family. Right now, we're being manipulated so that Democrats hate Republicans, and Muslims hate Christians, and the Russians hate the whatever, and and everybody else hates the Jews, and it's this divide and conquer thing, which works really well. All you have to do is blink, and you can get humans to buy into this kind of thing. And it's very unfortunate, but we are the human family, and we do have an enemy, but the way that we deal with our enemy is not the way that we've been programmed to deal with each other. The way we deal with our enemy is to heal them. And the way that we heal them is to be in partnership with our Creator, which is their Creator too. It's just that they stepped further away from their Creator than we have.
Yeah,
but that situation is changing rapidly right now.
Has Carl had any insight on? I know this is maybe a little too technically specific, but has he had any insight on the effect of social media on us as a society?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. It is the mechanism for widespread mind control.
But by whom? By the perpetrators, or just by ourselves?
Well, it's mostly by the perpetrators, but the cabal is very much involved in using technology for mind control.
Mm-hmm.
I did an interview not too long ago with a woman. Her name was Jian Liang, and she was remotely mind controlled. A lot of the mind control victims from the Illuminati or MK Ultra perspective is when they grab the kids at young and they do splits and they create altars, and then the world's your oyster with these people afterwards. You can get them to do anything, amazing things.
Denny,
But she was. This was all done to her remotely as an adult.
we have a few questions from the chat room.
Sure.
This one's from Bryden Carr. What are our obligations to our own healing? I think that's a really, really good question.
Yeah, that's an excellent question because, in the face of me saying that, we're the human family, well, it's very important you heal yourself, because if without a healed self, or at least a person who's in the process of healing themselves, they're very little use to their fellow man. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that's kind of integral to the Lightworker Healing Protocol is that, we're all in this together. So your healing, your personal healing, and the healing you do with yourself is just as important as the healing you could do for others. So, the Mother Teresa model is very compelling, but it's also not very realistic for most of us because, I'll tell you, let me read I want to read some real short prayers for you just to give you a feel for what's taught.
Sure, go for it.
Just for a sec.
Mm-hmm. So when you speak in terms of prayers, are we talking about mantras, or do you sit down on your knees and pray?
I have this tape to my to where I go to sleep so I can read it when I get up in the morning. I just ripped it off. So these are what we call Creator's prayers. So the first prayer, we used to call it the love prayer, but now it's called we used to call it the love prayer, and now we call it saving oneself and humanity. These are really short prayers. Source Creator, be my partner in life each and every day to keep me focused on love, receiving and giving both to myself and to all those around me. And then we have a prayer, it's called raise belief quotient in the divine and oneself. We have another one that's called protection, another one that's called the air, meal, and beverage blessing, another one called the medication blessing, another one that's called healing, another one called well-being, and another one called manifesting abundance. Mm-hmm. And these are just really short prayers that emphasize the partnership with the being that created you. And it's really not any more complicated than that. It's not a religious thing. Mm-hmm. It's just recognizing that, you didn't create yourself and you're part of the human family, and we were put on earth to help each other and love each other. So
can you ask for healing, having never done any healing for other people yourself?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yes.
And you don't need to be psychic, and you don't need to be especially skilled at anything. If you can read a 160-page book and get a basic understanding, basic reading skills, and you can sit quietly for 20 minutes to 30 minutes, anyone can do the Lightworker Healing Protocol.
So what if it's a trench, what is it called? A trench prayer?
Foxhole prayer.
Foxhole prayer. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's how most people pray. That some of the most effective prayers are foxhole prayers because of the intent and the devotion to, their connection. They're desperately wanting to connect with God, and they're very focused and have a clear intent on what they're asking for.
Right. So, how much does emotion play versus intent?
Well, emotions. I think it's a little overrated maybe when it comes to prayer. Mm-hmm. I think sincerity is probably better, and not being duplicitous, those kinds of things are perhaps more important than just emotion itself.
Okay.
But the foxhole prayer is unfortunate because, number one, most people know what to pray for. They don't know what's wrong, and they don't have any practice making connection with their creator.
Mm-hmm. Well, who's your creator? How do you describe the creator?
Well, I didn't create myself. So the being who created me and the universe and everything I can see, touch, and feel or think about is the creator.
So do you have a sort of agnostic approach to what or who that is? Meaning you don't have like a description definition for the shape and what it is, and
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, it's it's by definition, it kind of has to remain very ethereal, and I think when people try to talk about it and use language to pin a concept like that down in any concrete way, that's where we all decide to start dividing each other from each other. So I usually just start off with the idea of like, did you create yourself? No. Well, a being created you. And my personal experience with that is love. But I can't say that's going to be your personal experience with it. And I think it would be very disingenuous for me to try to, impose any of those notions onto you.
Yeah.
But I'd always like to start off with that question: did you create yourself? And then let the person who's the person who's getting that question, let them contemplate it on that. And the answers that they come up with are the ones that they should pay attention to, and nothing else that I say.
Yeah, I think that Bob Marley nailed it on the head. One love. And that's just me. I feel like the thing that we're drawn to, that is the momentum or the push, is towards love. And I kind of feel like whatever God is, it's an expression of love. Whatever the universe with a capital U is, it's about reaching this place of love. I don't know.
It's usually best described in the simple things, like pick up your sister's baby for the first time and look into her eyes.
Yeah.
Pick up a puppy.
Oh, you can. Like, we see our cat every day, and it breaks my heart how cute she is.
Yeah. Ride a horse. Go to the beach.
Yeah.
Watch a sunset. It's in those places usually where people make some of their best connections with God, and it doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. We don't. We have this tendency to try to pile on all this dogma and definitions and this and that and everything, which just messes the thing up, I think. But anyway,
another question from the chat room. This is from Ron from Earth Radio. Are we all really connected and we just need to realize it?
Yeah, I would say that's very true. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
From Audra, do you think us being able to connect all throughout the world so quickly can also be beneficial, such as situations like where we are all discussing, like this that we're discussing, what are we listening to in real time?
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, it's too bad it doesn't get used for that more often, but oh my gosh, yes. Yeah.
Well, I guess because it brings us back to that social media argument that yes, we can all be connected in this way, but that can also be used for propagating
mind control.
And I mean, that's what Maleficent and terrorist groups do. They use these mediums to get to impressionable minds that would otherwise before had not been exposed to it.
Yeah. A lot of deep subconscious programming goes on just with screen time, with your little smartphone staring you in the face or sit in front of your computer all day. A lot of nasty stuff is happening in the background that we're not aware of because of our disconnected state. So that's a problem. I mean, and it's a problem that extends into so many different areas of human well-being that, we're going to look back on it one day if we're lucky, and we're going to say, oh my gosh, how did we dodge that bullet?
So it's a race.
Kind of. I hate to say it that way, but it kind of is.
Mm-hmm. And who's going to win?
I don't know. I mean, supposedly God doesn't even know, because it's a free will. This is a free will experiment. Mm-hmm. So we have an opportunity to engage the divine realm to solve this problem, because it is at the divine realm level. That's the divine realm skills are what's needed to solve the problem that humans are facing right now. But it's only going to happen at our request. If we don't ask for it, nothing's going to happen. We're driving the car here. We're at the steering wheel, and we have the option to take advantage of our affiliation with the divine realm or not. It's up to us. So if enough of us get on board with this, and I would propose the LHP itself. That's the most powerful tool at our disposal right now. If enough of us do that, we're going to start seeing things in the real world that demonstrates that healing is taking place. And that's just what I believe. I mean, based on all this study and everything that I've been doing over these last several years, that would be my claim. And I understand why people would be very reticent to take that seriously.
Yeah. Free will's an interesting concept, right?
Yes.
We all want that to be true, and I believe it's true. I hope it's true.
Yeah, it's the greatest blessing and the most devastating curse all in one.
Kind of, sort of. Yeah, I guess you're right, but I'll take free will over
determinism.
Determinism and being at peace with knowing what's going to happen. I kind of like not knowing what's going to happen. Now, okay, so if you pray enough, do you get into the afterlife? How does one?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we discussed that a lot. In fact, one of the recent webinars that we did was just about being a light being.
But now, if I don't pray at all, if I don't subscribe to any of this stuff, if I'm an atheist, but I'm a good person, where do I end up?
Well, it kind of depends on your state of mind at the time you pass. Mm-hmm. So if you're in pain, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling insecure about your place in the world, and you die, the chances of you being able to move on to the light as a light being, to reunite with the Creator and other loved ones who've gone to the divine realm, mm-hmm. then you're going to become an earthbound spirit. Right now, our understanding is that about a third of all the people end up as earthbound spirits. So one of the things that the LHP does is rescues earthbound spirits. So if you have a parent who's passed away or something like that, you can do a LHP protocol for them, and it works. They will recognize the light callers. They will be transfigured, if you will, as an earthbound spirit, enough to where they can recognize, oh, there's a place for me to go where I'll be safe and taken care of and loved. And that's our home. That's our real home. This is our life as humans is the weird part. That's where, shit's, this is not an easy place to be. This is Carl channeled Marilyn Monroe, I think, before I met him. And her exact words were cesspool.
Are there any aliens that are allies in all this?
Yeah, but they're in a different dimension, and it's a hands-off policy. It's a free will. The Pleiadians are the poster kids for that, being in that arena, and they are very much on our side, if you will. But they're not going to interfere. If they interfere, then the whole experiment is pointless. So if you're in a foot race and somebody gives you a motorcycle, well, it's meaningless.
The gray aliens?
No. The Pleiadians. Pleiadians are what you would call benevolent ETs, but they're just watching. They don't have a participatory role. What we've learned is some people do have intuitive connections to the positive aliens, but they really have a hands-off policy towards humans as far as human affairs go.
Right, but what about all these grays that people see?
Oh, they're the creation of the Anunnaki, and the Greys are a biological robot that have been doing DNA experiments on humans for thousands of years.
So they are experimenting in a. It's not a good thing. They're not helping.
No. I mean, if you've read David Jacobs, you get an earful of that. I mean, and there's been other researchers, Dr. Carla Turner. Unfortunately, a lot of these people are not with us anymore, but Dr. Carla Turner is one. Barbara Bertalik is another one. Mm-hmm. Phil Schneider, he was telling the truth about a lot of this stuff, as well as Bill Cooper. Len Kasten is another one who's kind of got his eye on things in probably a more accurate way than most people. Jacques Vallée, although Jacques Vallée is very reticent to, I think, talk about everything he knows.
Well, I mean, he was one of the earlier proponents to offer the idea that aliens may not be these physical nuts and bolts beings coming from other. Yeah.
Well, I think the more important message from him was that this has a lot more to do with consciousness manipulation than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right.
Now, how long do you think, or what will it take for us to get to the point? Because for so long, we've been up and down, progress backwards. So when does it get to that tipping point? Well,
we're looking at probably the next 5 to 7 years is what is our understanding. The rulership from the Anunnaki side is changing hands. It's going from Ninmah to, I think, Enlil, where it's kind of like Ninmah was a little less aggressive with handling the human situation than Enlil is going to be. The prognosis right now, from what we hear, is that they're just going to shut it down like they did last time, and they're going to get us to do it to ourselves, which I think is what they did last time.
Do you think that there's a planet X near around orbit around our sun?
I think it's got a huge elliptical orbit. Brian knows more about this than I do, but I think it's like a 3,600 year orbit or something like that. It's not very close to us now, and it's kind of irrelevant whether it is or not. But that's the home planet of the Anunnaki. That's my understanding. It's not an area where I have a whole lot of interest myself, because I think that every time we do a channeling, the light beings are talking about the partnership with the divine realm and how important that is. And it's almost like no matter what question I ask, I'm the guy who figures out who to channel next, and then I write the questions up, and then I ask the question, and at the end of every question, they all say the same thing. But if you look at it from their perspective, they're looking at the Earth, and it's like a house on fire. It's like, so what are they? They're going to sit down and talk to you about the threads in your pillow when your house is on fire? No, they're going to tell you to get out of the damn house, or what you can do to put the fire out. So that's kind of what's happening in the channeling series right now.
Okay, so let me ask you this, because the minutes are ticking down. I want to get this last question in. So this is from Libertas in the chat room. Why do the others, meaning aliens, not interact with the masses?
Well, they do interact with the masses, but the way they do it is through mind control.
So it's all got it. Okay,
it's like a board game.
So there is hope then. There's hope. And
hell yeah!
Really?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Big time. But it's not a spectator sport. We actually have to do something. We have to learn something, and we have to do something. And I think an outsider listening to me would view me, and rightly so, as being very myopic and kind of closed-minded about the way I'm talking about things. And I totally understand that. So I just feel compelled to say that. I don't expect people just to believe what I'm saying because I'm saying it.
Right. Well, for instance, like we mentioned earlier, science on occasion does back up the metaphysical. And I always say that most scientific hypotheses start out just as that. It's a certain amount of circumstantial evidence. A scientist has an idea, it's a hypothesis, and then they pursue it to find out if there is evidence to support it.
Yeah.
And
as you could imagine, science is one of the areas where the ETs are heavily focused to keep things narrowly focused. Because there's a whole body of knowledge that's actually there and not disclosed, and a whole body of knowledge that is being hidden from scientists by virtue mostly of mind control, so they don't find out.
See, that's interesting, because the scientist is trying to break through, as many of us are. So if that's true, then it seems that we are too often failing. But the search, for instance, for Planet 9 is really interesting, because there's clearly something orbiting our solar system that is having a perturbation on the gravitational force. And so it's an idea, is it a planet? And then is it maybe a dust ring or a pack of asteroids? And then the new thing is it a primordial black hole the size of a baseball? And it's interesting how we play with all these ideas in science, and that's okay. And that's what we're doing here with spirituality. We're playing with different ideas, and hoping for a satisfactory outcome.
Yeah. And as far as my involvement with this is like the emphasis is on the healing, and it's really encouraging when you could start at a kind of small, like we're talking about the galaxy and ETs and other races and advanced technology and everything, but you can also bring this back down to like it could be anything. It's like my dog's limping, so you do the LHP for them and they stop limping. Or like my wife today, my wife learned how to do the LHP, and she does agility competitions with our border collies, and she's got a knee that's been acting up. Mm-hmm. Well, she's also a massage therapist, and she had a massage client coming, and she said, before my client comes, I'm going to come in and do an LHP session. And she didn't tell me who she's going to do it for. But then later I asked her, did you do the LHP session for your client? She goes, no, I did it for some animals. She goes, but my knee feels better. And I'm like, that's the LHP. That's what this is about. It's like, it doesn't have to be big, huge things. It could be just something, my knee feels better.
Exactly.
So anyway,
and if it works for you, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Denny, thank you so much for hanging with us tonight and sharing your ideas.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. You made it very easy for me to blabber about.
That's what we do. We blabber here on. So if you want to find out about Denny Hent and getwisdom.com is the place to go. Thank you all once again for tuning in tonight. And I saw we had some newcomers in the chat room. So thank you all for joining in the conversation there. And once again, I do implore you all, please check out the new videos that I just posted on the Paranormal Pop YouTube channel. So just go to youtube.com/paranormalpop, and I'm starting a new series of ufological summaries of some of the most popular events in history, and I'll do more of those moving forward, and then more in-depth versions of some of those select events like Roswell, the Socorro, New Mexico crash, the Belgian UFO in 1980, was it 87 or 89? I always forget that. Anyway, so we'll be doing more of those. Check it out. I love doing it. I want to do more for you. So if you give me a little encouragement, like, support, subscribe, I will be on my way to produce more for you. Thank you once again, Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now on KGRA Radio. I want to thank our producer, Brace Hobbs. He is a great person, to bounce ideas off of. Race, I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts are on our commentary on Catholicism later. Special thanks again, and until next time, live in the mystery.